Good afternoon. So we will start our discussion, and today we are going to start a new topic, which is one of the most important or fundamental topics in uh, computational methods or numerical solution for heat and mass transfer problems, okay, or heat and fluid flow problems, which is discretization. So before that, let me just summarize what we have discussed till now. So after a brief introduction, we have discussed what are the important governing equations which are used for modeling fluid flow problems and thermal problems and other types of problems, similar problems such as diffusion based problem or species transfer problem. And studying those equations, what we have noted is that the equations, all of them are of similar pattern. There may be slight changes, but the pattern is similar. They have similar types of terms such as unsteady term, then advective term, diffusive term, source terms. So if we can develop a governing, a solution algorithm which can solve this general format of equation, then we can modify it suitably for solving any of the problems, like any of the thermal or flow or species transfer problems. So that was the idea behind writing and studying those equations and trying to put them in the same general format. And then we have studied briefly about PDEs, partial differential equations. Not everything about PDEs, obviously, that's an entire different course, but only small things which are related to our course, like second order PDEs and what is the nature of a particular second order PD and how it relates to the physical behavior of a problem. So we have seen there are three types of PDs: parabolic PDs, hyperbolic PDs, and elliptic PDs, and each of them results in different types of behavior. Okay, so just to again reiterate, elliptic PDs are PDs where there are no characteristic lines and the information travels from any disturbance or any point in all direction instantaneously at infinite velocity, and all the boundary values influence the solution. Okay, and this type of nature is seen when we have spatial variation, like for second order PDs we have a double derivative of space, okay, space coordinate. Then for parabolic PDs, in space, we have seen that it is similar to elliptic, but in time, it is parabolic. And in time, what parabolic means is that any disturbance can only influence one side or one direction of the coordinates. So, for example, for time, we can only influence the future, but not the past. And this type of PDs will have a single derivative of that concerned variable. So, in this case, time. So, single derivative of time will be there. And again, these are controlled by boundary conditions for the spatial direction and initial one side initial condition. So obviously you cannot give any condition for the future, but from the starting point of time you can give some condition which will influence the evolution of the variable. The third type, which is the hyperbolic type, generally will have a second derivative of the variable which has hyperbolic nature. So if it is a time variable, generally it will be a time variable. There will be a second derivative of time. Okay, so like we have seen in wave equation, and in this case, the disturbance can only influence a limited region depending on time and space, and these are bounded by characteristic lines, and any boundary condition or initial condition may or may not influence the results depending on whether they fall within the domain of dependence or not. And we have defined couple of terms: domain of influence and domain of dependence. Domain of influence is the region in space and time or in space coordinate which gets affected by any disturbance, and domain of dependence is the region or space in space and time which can influence any point. Okay, so for any point, any change in the domain of dependence will influence the variable at that point. Okay, so now we will move into the next topic, which is discretization. To end the previous topic, just one final small point. So what is a well-posed problem? Okay. So in general, a problem is known as a well-posed problem if the solution, so if the problem is governed by the PD, say a problem is there, a physical problem like thermal or flow problem, which is governed by a PD, if the solution to the PD exists and is unique, means not there are not multiple solutions. So it has to be a unique solution. And if the solution depends continuously on the initial and boundary conditions, then the problem is known as well-posed problem. Okay. So in that case, we can achieve the final solution by using our numerical algorithm. For example, we know that for a particular temperature or temperature initial or boundary condition, say any temperature problem like the variation of temperature in a plate or a rod. Okay. So it should be a unique variation of temperature. It will change with time and space, but for the same point, there cannot be two temperatures at the same time. So the solution has to be unique. Okay. And those type of problems are known as well-posed problems. Our solution algorithm should not give for the same or cannot give for the same point two temperatures. Then you have to solve two equations. There are this type of problems also, but that is a different thing. Okay, so we will not go into those details. So let us come to our next topic, which is discretization. What is discretization? We have briefly had a glimpse of discretization when I was giving the introductions through the introductory slides. So what happens in the CFD problem is that we have a domain for which we want to solve the equations to find the variation of the variable. Variable in this case is say velocity, magnitude UV and W, or temperature T, or concentration C. So for an analytical problem, we solve that equation directly in the domain. We try to solve the equation directly in the domain by integrating the equation and try to find the variation. Okay. So if it's possible to find a solution, we will get a continuous solution. So at any point you can find the solution. But obviously it's very difficult to integrate the solution for a complex problem like a 2D or 3D problem. Only for simplistic problems we have analytical solution. For a numerical method, what we do is we divide the entire domain into number of subdomains. This also we have discussed. We divide the domain into number of subdomains. These are various names. So they are either called as control volumes or elements. Okay. So for our FVM, like finite volume or finite volume methods, basically what we will study in in the most for most of the course, or what is widely used, finite volume method, which is most widely used. The term control volume is generally used. Okay. For FEM, finite element method, we use the term element to represent the subdomains. But we will not study finite element method in this course because it is not very widely used for CFD problems. Finite element method is more widely used for deformation and or stress strain related problems. Okay, so not very widely used for CFD problems, but it is possible to use finite element method for a CFD problem for discretizing the equations. Similarly, we will study finite difference method. There we do not have any control volumes, but we use something which are known as nodes or grid points. Okay. So in the finite volume method also, these control volumes, each of them is a volume, right? In 2D it's a area, in 3D it's a volume, in 1D it's a line. So each of these is represented by one or more representative points, discrete points. Okay, these are known as grid points or nodes. Again, terminology may vary for different usage. So typically we will call them as grid points. For finite element method, they are known as nodes. Here also you can call them as nodes. So nowadays it has become more flexible. But the common terminology that is used for CFD problems is the volume is the control volume and the points are the grid points. Okay, and the process of generating these subdomains, or by dividing the entire domain into the subdomains, is known as grid generation or mesh generation. Okay, so you are dividing the domain into certain subdomains, and this is known as grid or mesh generation. This we have already seen. Just to refresh your memory, let me just show it again because it is quite important. So say this is the volume, and we are dividing it into this type of sub volumes, okay, subdomains. Each of these volumes, small volumes, you can see is a control volume, and we can represent them by a grid point at its center. So what is the role of the grid point? It will become clear. So the values like temperature or velocities are stored at these grid points. Okay. So we do not have any variation within a single control volume. Each control volume is more like a pixel, you can say. Like when you see a photo or a television channel, so you have a minimum resolution governed by the pixel size. So each of them are like that. So each of them has no variation within them for temperature or any other variable, but has a unique value of temperature for this. So the next grid point for the next control volume will have a may or may not have a different temperature. So by plotting all these values, we can find the variation in the entire domain. So what is important to note here is that the values are stored here. Any variable, say temperature, concentration, or velocity, are stored here in discrete form. Means you do not have a continuous variation. You have the value at a point, at the next point. So if you divide the domain into say 1D domain also, you have the values at certain points. You do not have any values in between the points. You have to interpolate to find or to plot the variation in between the points. So if I have a very coarse mesh, if I just divide it into 5 control volumes along the length, I will have just 5 values along the length. Then to find any variation within those 5, like from one point to another point, I will have to interpolate. Okay. Anyway, these things will become clear later on, but please keep this in mind. Okay, so this is what is known as discretization, and then why do we do this discretization? Because then we can simplify the governing differential equations. Remember that the governing differential equation is valid for the entire domain as well as any small location also. Like an infinitesimal location also, it will be valid. Okay, so because it's a representation of a physical phenomena. Okay, so it is valid with certain assumptions like continuum assumption. It is valid over any length of the domain. So for each subdomain also the governing differential equations are valid. But because the subdomain size is very small, we can take certain approximations while calculating the derivatives. For example, if there is a derivative like dx dt, we can approximate it as some value like x1 minus x2 by some delta t, difference in temperature. Okay, so we can replace the derivative in terms of difference equations. So ultimately what we will do is we will get algebraic equation in terms of differential equations. To simplify the governing differential equations for each subdomain into a set of algebraic equations. Okay, that's why we are discretizing, because if we try to simplify the equations over the entire volume, then the solution will become too approximate, too unrealistic. Okay, but if you have very small subdomains, your derivative can be approximated in terms of differences. Okay. The smaller you go, the more accurate it will become. Smaller you go, the more accurate it will become. It's just basic common sense. So ultimately what we will have a system of algebraic equations. Why a system of algebraic equations? Because for each control volume, we will have a set of equations. So if I am solving for say u velocity, v velocity, w velocity, so three-dimensional velocity and temperature. So I have 4 variables, u, v, w and t. So in general, I will have 4 governing equations: u momentum equation, v momentum equation, w momentum equation, and temperature equation. Obviously, I will have the continuity equation also for solving the pressure, as we will see later. But in general, 4 governing equations, 4 unknowns, and these are valid over the entire domain. Now, when I am discretizing the domain into small subdomains, each of this equation is valid for the small subdomain also. So ultimately, for each subdomain, each control volume, I will get a algebraic equation for each of these equations. Because I have 4 equations, I will get 4 algebraic equations: one for u velocity, one for v velocity, one for w velocity, and one for temperature T for each control volume. So if I have 1,000 control volumes, I will have 4,000 equations. If I have 1 million control volumes, I will have 4 million equations. Okay. That's why we are saying that we will generate a system of algebraic equations. So this, all of them can be solved together along with the boundary variable values, boundary conditions and initial conditions. to obtain the values at each of these points. So at each control volume, then you will have 4 unknowns also, U, V, W, and T. And you have 4 equations for that control volumes. If you have 1 million control volumes, you have 4 million unknowns and 4 million equations. So we can solve the 4 million equations to get the 4 million unknowns. And although it seems like a very large number of equations, it is possible to solve them in a limited amount of time, as you will see later for practical problems. We can solve very large number of equations in very short time period nowadays with large computational power. It would have been a very difficult task in 1980s and 90s, but for the last 10-15 years, CFD has a advanced leaps and bounds. It has become very, very popular in industry. All the industries nowadays use CFD tools to minimize their cost of experimentation and to improve the predictions. Okay, so any questions? So no questions. Let us try to understand it even further. Okay, let us take an example. Okay, so let us consider a 1D domain like say a rod or a bar, okay, or a wire. Okay, it's a 1D domain where there is no variation along the third direction. Sorry, along both the second and third direction. Only the variation occurs along the x direction. Okay, and this domain is shown here schematically like this. So the domain length goes from x equal to 0 to x equal to L, where L is the length of the domain. And at a certain time, it's a steady state problem. So let us consider a steady state problem. So no variation with time. So the only conditions that are given are the boundary conditions. So at the boundaries, it has two boundaries. These 2 points are the boundaries, x equal to 0 and x equal to L. The other sides are not boundaries because it's a 1D problem. Okay. So at x equal to 0, we give the condition t equal to t1, and x equal to L, we give the condition t equal to t2. Where t1 and t2 are some temperature values. And we want to solve this problem. Okay. So obviously for this simple problem, it's a conduction problem. What is the governing equation for this problem? If you look at the equation, the source term will be 0, the advective term will be 0, the transient term will be 0. So we only have the conduction term, diffusion term. What is the conduction term in 1D? d dx of k dt dx equal to 0. Okay, d dx of k dt dx equal to 0. So the governing equations for this problem is d dx of k dt dx equal to 0. If you integrate it, you get dt dx is equal to some constant. Okay, say this constant is a. So here I have written a simplified form of the governing equation after one integration. So now there are two ways to solve this problem. Okay, if I can solve it analytically, obviously it's possible because it's such a simple problem. What will be the way to do it? Everybody knows it because this is very basic. So we'll just integrate it with respect to x, and we'll find that t is equal to ax plus b. Okay. And this a and b are constants which needs to be calculated based on boundary conditions. We have two boundary conditions. At x equal to 0, t is equal to t1, and at x equal to L, t is equal to t2. So if you apply those two conditions, you can find the values of a and b. And then if you replace these values of a and b, you will find that the final solution is t is equal to t2 minus t1 into x by L plus t1. Okay. What is the nature of this solution? This is a linear variation. Temperature goes from T1 to T2 linearly. And the main thing that we can understand from here is that for any location x, okay, you can find the value of temperature. So for any location x, we will have a value of temperature. So the analytical solution gives us a continuous solution valid over the entire domain. Okay, whatever is the value of x, if x is a fraction or whatever is the value of x, you will have a solution for t. Okay. This is the nature of our analytical solution. Now let us try to understand how to solve this problem numerically. Okay. Analytically, we already know this is a very simple thing. Numerically, also it's a very simple problem, but because this is maybe your first exposure to numerical solution, we have to understand this very thoroughly. Okay. So numerical solution based on discretization is valid only at discrete points, which are the grid points. Okay, this is a very important distinction with analytical solution. Analytical solution is valid over the entire length. Numerical solution is only valid at certain points. So this point, this point, this point, like this. Only at this point, the numerical solution is valid. Okay. So now you can think about cases. For example, say this case. Okay, you can see that there's a nice variation of pressure or a nice variation of pressure. This is a numerical solution, right? Nice variation of temperature, nice variation of pressure is there. Similarly for any other cases. So this is from our own research. You can see that there is a nice variation of temperature here. This is temperature profile. So nice variation of temperature. Again, from our own research, nice variation of liquid fraction, mass fraction, which is species concentration. So how are these plots generated? Okay. So how is this plot generated? For example, this variation of temperature. Okay. So remember that the solution is still valid only at discrete points. The solution is not valid continuously. Okay. So if I divide the domain in each direction into say 100 subdomains or 50 subdomains, I will have temperature at only 50 points along this line. So when we are plotting this, we generally interpolate between these points. The software that we are using for plotting, or if we are using say MATLAB or any other software, it will automatically interpolate between these points to show you a smooth curve like this. But actual solution is only valid at discrete points. It is like plotting in Excel. So if you have 10 values and you plot in Excel, you can either plot only the values or you can plot by joining the values through lines. Okay. And in that, if you join the values, Excel can interpolate in between and give you a smooth solution. That's why we get a nice looking solution like this. But the actual solution is only valid at discrete grid points. I will show you an example later on how the actual solution looks like. Okay. These are only valid at discrete points. Maybe I can show one from one of our students. See, I have something here. There I can show you some solution, how the variation looks like. Trying to find a simple solution. All these are very complicated. Open this. Let this open. It will take some time because it's a large solution. Meanwhile, we'll continue discussing. Okay. So anyway, so what we have to do is we have to now divide the domain into number of subdomains, as I was saying. So one way is to divide them into points. Okay. So from x equal to 0 to x equal to n, we have divided into certain number of points, grid points. Okay, discrete grid points. So if we consider any grid point, say I, okay, it's just a representative grid point. It could have been here, here, or here. So its neighboring points are I minus 1 and I plus 1. I is the index of the grid point. Okay, I can vary from 1 to some value n. So I minus 1 is the left side neighbor, I plus 1 is the right side neighbor. Okay. So obviously the equation is still valid for this point also, the Gaussian equation. So dt dx is equal to a for this value I. Okay. So I can simplify this because these distances are very small. Okay, because I can divide this domain into large number of points like this, and the distance between I and I minus 1 or I and I plus 1 is very small. I can write this derivative as ti plus 1 minus ti minus 1 by the distance. Okay, so dt we can write as delta t, ti plus 1 minus ti minus 1, and dx we can write as the space between I plus 1 and I minus 1, which is 2 into delta x, where delta x is the grid spacing. It is known as grid spacing. It is the spacing between two adjacent grid points. Okay. So this is equal to A. This is only one equation which is valid for I. Similar equations can be found for any other point. Okay. So if I vary I from say 2 to n minus 1, I can generate n minus 2 equations. Boundary values we already know at I equal to 1 and I equal to n. Already temperatures are given. So we don't need the equation. But for all internal points, we will have n minus 2 equations and n minus 2 unknowns. Okay, ultimately we will have n minus 2 equations, n minus 2 unknowns. What are the unknowns? The values of t at all these internal grid points. We can simultaneously solve them to get the final solution. Okay. Because these are algebraic equations, not differential equations, these are much easier to solve. Okay. So this is just a simple example to show you how to do it. We'll go into systemic solution, how to solve them in a proper way. This was just a common sense solution. Okay. So just to summarize, similar equations can be formed for all discrete points and can be solved together. Okay. Remember, this will give us the values only at the discrete points. To find the values in between, we may interpolate. Okay. Results are plotted by connecting or plotting the values for each point. Okay. This is how it looks like. So I will show you the temperature profile, how it looks like. This is from one of the energy storage problems that we are working on. And this is the variation of temperature. Okay, so at a certain time, the temperature looks like this. There is a capsule here, PCM capsule, phase change material capsule, and the flow is occurring around it, high temperature flow, and that causes the capsule to melt. So we are trying to capture the characteristics of melting and energy storage. So with time, obviously, more hot fluid is coming in, and the internal region gets heated. So when you are seeing this plot, you see that the variation looks very smooth. The vectors, let me remove the vectors, flow vectors. And you can see that the temperature variation looks very smooth. The isotherms look very smooth. Okay, but this is not how you get the result in the solution. Okay, this is only because the software is interpolating between the points to show you this kind of nice result. Okay, so this is how the grid points look like. When I'm saying discretized points, we have divided into 50 by 50 points, and each of the points look like this. And you can see that even within the points, we are seeing variation. Okay, even within the points, we are seeing variation, but it is not true. As I have just explained, for a single point, we will have a single value. It is only the software here, this take plot, that is showing you like this. So the actual solution looks like this. Actual solution only has discrete value. Okay. Let me just check. The problem here. We are doing flood. Just a second. Let me check what is the. This is how the actual solution looks like. Okay, each point has a discrete value. You can see that there is no variation within each of the control volumes. Okay, so when I was showing you the nice looking plots, it was only nice because our software was interpolating it, but this actual solution looks like this. Actual variation looks like this. Each point has each control volume has a single value which is represented by this grid point. Okay, so if you want to plot in between, you have to interpolate to show the nice lines like what is done here. Okay, the interpolation, but the solution is not like that. Solution is still like this. If I increase the number of points, you will see that much more variation is there. Anyway, this is not directly related to your to this course, but just to show you, if I increase the number of points, now you can see that each point has some different value. Okay. So this is how we get a CFD solution in general. So what is the sequence procedure for a CFD problem? We have already discussed once in the introductory classes. Let me just revise that. So first there is a first process is known as pre-processing. Okay, before running the simulation, we need to set up the problem, give the boundary conditions, all these things. Okay, so what is part of pre-processing? First, we need to set up the geometry. So geometry you can draw yourself if it's a simple geometry like a square, cube, rectangle, circle, sphere, or it can be provided by generating it in a CAD software. Okay, so for example, it's a complicated geometry like the geometry of a turbine blade, geometry of a car, of a say aircraft wing, or any other realistic geometry. Then it is developed by the persons who are working on using CAD software. Okay, CAD software is not part of the CFD software. It can be a part, but actually it's a separate software. But nowadays CFD solvers also include CAD software. CAD is just for generating the geometry. Once you have the geometry, to discretize the geometry means we divide the geometry into the subdomains, control volumes. Okay, this part is known as meshing in a commercial software, or you can call this as grid generation. Then we also, so if I solving this problem, writing a code, I have to discretize the equations also. We have to first decide what are the equations, then we have to discretize the governing equations. How to discretize the equations? In the way that like I've shown here. Okay, this was a simple case. For complex case, it's a long problem. Okay, that is the most difficult part of the solution. Then we provide all the data like property values, input data, and initial and boundary conditions. So once everything is ready, we then solve the equations. Okay, so after discretization, the equations have become algebraic equations from PDEs. Okay, now we solve these algebraic equations. There are various methods of solving these algebraic equations. We will learn later, and it may be necessary to iterate, or we can directly also sometimes get the solution without iteration. So once the solution is there, so now solution can be a single set of solution if it's a steady state problem with no variation with time, or it can be a variation with time, means you have the temperature in the, like I was showing you the case, temperature in the entire domain at say time t equal to 1 second. Then again the new variation of temperature at t equal to 2 seconds. So this type of problem is known as time marching problem. You are marching along the time and getting new and new results again and again. So that may be necessary, or that is necessary for unsteady problems where you want to find the variation with time. So first part is the tricky part, difficult part while developing the code and trying to discretize. Second part, solution may take a lot of time, but we do not have to get involved too much. We just have to monitor whether the solution is going towards the correct solution or not. How do we monitor? Based on certain parameters which are known as residuals, we will study later. We can understand whether the solutions are going towards the correct solution or it is not going towards the correct solution. Okay. If it is going towards the correct solution, all is fine. If it is not going to the correct solution, we have to stop, go back and change some parameters or change some discretization method or change the meshing or the grid generation and again try to solve it. Okay. So once the solution is done, solution can take from few microseconds or it can take months also. For large turbulence problems, solutions can run months. Even in our research also, we run simulations which take 1 month to solve. Okay, so it can take a lot of days also, or it can run in a few seconds also. For the example problem that I will give to you, it will take a few seconds or less than a second to solve. Okay. Once the solution is there, what do you get after solution? You have the discrete values of temperature, velocity, like I was showing you at this representative grid points. Now you have to graphically present that data so that normal users can understand that data. Okay. So this graphical represent, maybe you can draw isotherms for showing temperature by interpolating the temperature values, or we may show uh, streamlines for the velocity. So those are part of post processing. The solver does not give you streamline or isotherm. It just gives you individual values of velocity and temperature at individual points. You have to interpolate to generate those things. Okay, isotherms, then streamlines, things like that. Then we can do other calculations, like we can calculate the heat flux based on the temperature value, because we know that heat flux is equal to minus k dt dx. So at any point we can calculate what is minus k dt dx based on the calculated value of temperature. Similarly, we can find the shear stress at any point, mu del u del y, based on the mu value and u, and like we have already calculated the u while solving the CFD problem. Based on the obtained u value, we can just calculate the shear stress. Those are all part of post processing. Okay. So additional calculations can be done. Any other calculation, there may be a lot of other things to be calculated, like what is the amount of energy transfer, energy stored, okay, average temperature in the domain, things like that, average velocity of average, or what is the mass flow rate, things like that, all can be calculated, part of post processing. So this is the general process in a CFD problem. And this discretization, what is discretization? At the core, the discretization is dividing the domain into number of subdomains and then converting the governing differential equation to algebraic equation. So this can be done using different methods. As I have outlined here, finite difference method is one of the methods which is very popular because it's quite simple to use it and is accurate for simplistic problems. And there are other advantages also, we'll see later. We can use finite volume method, which is the most popular method. It is used in most of the software, very versatile, can cater to complex problems. Finite difference method cannot be used for very complex geometries. Means it can be used, but there are certain drawbacks. Finite volume method is very suitable for any type of geometry. And then there is finite element method, which can also be used, but it is slightly slower as compared to finite volume or finite difference method. And as a result, is not very popular for thermal problems. But if you have combined problems like fluid flow, structural and fluid flow problems, fluid structure interaction, or only structural problems, then finite element method is used. But if it is a core CFD problem, like thermal or fluid flow problem, then finite element method is not very popular. Okay. So in our course, we will study finite difference and finite volume method. Most of the course will be focused on finite volume method, but we will start with a brief introduction or a brief description of finite difference method. So we will go into depth of finite difference method, but finite difference method is very easy to understand. So in a few classes, we can get to a position where we can solve actual CFD problems. Which by the next class, you will be able to solve actual CFD problems by writing codes using finite difference method. And I will give you some assignment also to do that. Okay, so we'll start the finite difference method. Let me keep this open here also. Just a second. I think I will take a break here, although it's not 1 hour, but we'll start a new topic. So let us take the break now and then we will continue the discussion. So we will continue. Am I still audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Screen is also visible, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So we will start with the first method, which is quite easy to implement and can give quite useful results for cases where we have regular type of geometries. Although it can be used for irregular geometries, when the geometry is regular, it is very powerful method and is known as finite difference method. Okay, so the crux of this method, the main important idea behind this method is that the derivatives that are present in the governing partial differential equations are replaced by suitable algebraic equations. Okay, so the derivatives are modified to algebraic terms, algebraic difference terms by using the Taylor series expansion. There can be other way also to come, like convert the PD to algebraic form, as we will see later. There is another way called polynomial, use of polynomial functions. But in general, the idea is to use Taylor series expansion to convert the derivatives that are present, first order derivative, second order, whatever is the order of derivative, mixed derivative, all derivatives can be modified to algebraic differences. Any derivative can be modified using Taylor series expansion. Okay. So everybody has studied Taylor series expansion. You must have studied in your undergraduate courses or even before. But just to refresh your memory, what is Taylor series? Basically, if you have a function f, any function f, which is a continuous function and it varies with x. Okay, this function f varies with x, and you know the value of this function at a point x. Okay, at some point x, you can find the value of the function at another point x plus delta x, where delta x is a very small value. Okay, so say if you know the value at x, say x is 1. Okay, so then you can find the value at 1.01 by using this sort of expansion. Okay, so what are the terms? If x plus delta x is equal to fx plus del f del x delta x by factorial 1 plus del square f del x square delta x square by factorial 2 plus del cube x del x cube delta x cube by factorial 3 and so on. In a term will be in a differential term will be del nf del xn delta x to the power n factorial n, and it will go on till infinity. Okay, so where delta x is the difference from the value x. Okay, so if I have know the value at say x equal to 1 and want to find the value at x equal to 1.01, so delta x will be 0.01, and then I can use the. So why it is possible to use this? Because all these derivatives need to be calculated at the original point x itself. So you don't need to know any value at x plus delta x. We just need to know the variation and values at the point x. Okay, so in terms of the values at the point x, we are able to get the value at x plus delta x. That's why this is so much useful. Okay, this Taylor series. So all the derivatives that you see here are at the point x. Okay, and we know the value at x, we know the variation at x, so we can use it to find the value at x plus delta x. Now the only thing that is that there are unlimited number of terms, right? Infinite number of terms. So this, when for calculating numerically, in real life, you have to stop after a few terms. Okay, so you have to truncate the equation after a few terms. So you can only take a few terms. If you are using a computer program, you can take large number of terms, but it is not necessary because the first terms have the highest values. Because the values depend on the power of delta x, and typically delta x is a small number. So delta x square will be less than delta x cube will be less than delta x square. So delta x to the power n is much smaller number. So because delta x is very small, so that's why only first few terms is sufficient to get the value of fx plus delta x. Okay, so let us take a look at an example. Okay, not directly. This is not directly related to our CFD. Okay, I'm just giving you a glimpse of what is Taylor series. In case you don't remember at this point, you should remember. This is a very important thing, but you may not remember. But this is a fundamental thing in maths, right? So if fx is fx, remember fx is any continuous function valid over certain domain x. Okay. So this function, let us consider a function sine 2 pi x. This is a continuous function of x. Okay. And we know the value at x equal to 0.2. Okay. Fx is 0.9511. You can just calculate the value at 0.2 using a calculator, and you will find that this is the value 0.9511. Okay. So if we want to know the value of fx at 0.22 using Taylor series expansion, we can try to find the value using Taylor series expansion. Okay. For reference, I am giving the actual solution here. Directly, if you solve sine 2 pi into 0.22, you get the correct solution, actual solution, which is 0.9823. Okay. But using Taylor series expansion, you will not be solving for directly, right? So how will we solve? If I take, so I have the Taylor series expression open here. So let us start with a Taylor series expansion which only has one term. Okay, or like this process is known as truncation. So you are removing all the other terms. You are truncating after one term. Okay. So by using one term, fx plus delta x is equal to fx. Okay. So our value of f at 0.22. Okay. So the value of sine 2 pi x at 0.22 is approximately equal to the value at 0.2, which is 0.9511. We have already calculated. And if you calculate the error, you will see that there is a 3.2% error from the actual value to the obtained value. If I want to improve the accuracy, I have to include more terms. So if I include one more term, okay. If I use two terms, then I have fx plus delta x is equal to fx plus del fx, del f del x, delta x by factorial 1. Okay. Let us try to calculate that. With two terms, f.22 is equal to fx, so f at 0.2 plus del f del x. Okay, so del f del x for this case will be what? 2 pi cos 2 pi x. Okay, so 2 pi cos 2 pi x, 2 pi into cos 2 pi into x. X is 0.2, right? You are calculating all the derivatives at 0.2, not at 0.22. That is the important thing. Okay. So if 2 pi into 0.2 into delta x. What is delta x here? It is 0.02 divided by factorial 1, which is 1. So we get the value 0.9899. Okay. We see that the error has reduced significantly. Now it is only 0.775%. Okay. Quite acceptable, very low error. Okay. If we go to three terms, so first two terms already it is similar to, like, it's the same terms. So the third term will be del square f del x square delta x square by factorial 2. So what is del square f del x square? Del f del x was 2 pi cos 2 pi x. So del square f del x square is 4 pi square sine 2 pi x. There will be a negative sign because you are taking a derivative of cos. So minus 4 pi square sine 2 pi x. Okay, where x is 0.2. So this is the term into delta x squared. Here there will be a square term. Okay, I think I missed it. 0.02 square will be there. Okay. So delta x square by factorial 2. Okay. So in this case, you will get 0.9824, and the error is very less. Okay, less than it's around 0.01% only. If you increase more number of terms, you will get even lesser and lesser errors. Okay, so it depends on us up to how much error we can tolerate, and accordingly we can select the number of terms. But Remember, if you use more number of terms, the calculation becomes much more computationally intensive because you have to calculate the factorials, and the factorial calculation takes a lot of time, and also you have to calculate the derivatives. So anyway, this is just about Taylor series expansion. We have not come to the finite difference method yet. Any questions? So it is clear what is Taylor series expansion, right? You can use the value at any point to calculate value at some other point. If there is a continuous function or any function, you can do it. It will not be this. So if I could have a polynomial or any other function, I could have done it. Okay. So we will use this fact that this is the Taylor series expansion. We will use this to devise a strategy for our discretization. Okay. And that strategy is known as finite difference scheme. Okay. That methodology is known as finite difference scheme. What is the strategy? Again, let us consider a domain like this, okay, where x is varying from one side to the other side. Y is also varying, but at this point, let us consider only the x direction. Okay, let us ignore the y direction. Let us consider a 2D domain, but we will just at first we'll just focus on the x direction, not focus on the y direction. Okay. So any point in xy domain can be represented by its indices I and j, where I varies from some value, say 1 to m, and j varies from 1 to n. Okay. So each point has a unique value of I comma j. So this point, preceding point will be I minus 1 comma j, because it is the preceding point in the x direction, and the succeeding point, next point will be I plus 1 comma j. What will be the point at the top of this? It will be I comma j plus 1, and the point at the bottom will be I comma j minus 1. Okay. Similarly, this corner point will be I minus 1 comma j plus 1, and the bottom corner point will be I minus 1 comma j minus 1. Okay. So like this, we can denote all the points with respect to their indices I and j, index basically. Okay. So we are just showing, so I am just showing along the x direction for one line. We are not considering the other points along the j direction. So for a particular point I comma j, let the variable is phi. Okay, it's a representative variable. It can be temperature or velocity or any other variable. Let the variable value be phi I comma j. Okay. Now using Taylor series expansion, we can write this phi I plus 1 comma j, because it's just a little distance away from ij, right? It's at a distance delta x away from ij, okay, where delta x is the grid spacing along the x direction. So each point along the x direction is delta x away from its previous point. Okay. So I minus 1 comma j is delta x away from I comma j. Similarly, I comma j is delta x away from I plus 1 comma j. So f at x plus delta x is nothing but the variable value at I plus 1 comma j, right? Because x plus delta x is this point. So phi I plus 1 comma j is equal to f at x, which is phi I comma j. I will not again and again say I comma j. I will just say phi ij. Okay. So phi I plus 1 j is equal to phi ij plus the derivative of phi. See, phi is nothing but the function, right? So derivative of phi with respect to x, del phi del x ij. At what point? Derivative at the point x, original point. So ij. So del phi del x ij into delta x divided by 1, factorial 1, into delta x divided by factorial 1. I've omitted because it's just 1. Okay. Next term will be del square phi del x square at ij at the same point, so second derivative, this term, into delta x square by factorial 2. Similarly, third term is del cube phi del x cube ij delta x cube by factorial 3, and so on and so forth. Okay, you can go to nth term will be del n phi del x n ij delta x to the power n by factorial n. Okay. So we can now write this. Okay, we can now write this by rearranging the term we will bring this on one side. Why we are bringing this on one side? Because we are interested to find the or represent the differential term del phi del x in terms of algebraic term. Okay, so that in the PD, if there is a first order differential term, we can remove that first order derivative in terms of algebraic expression. Okay, that's why I am writing this first order derivative in terms of algebraic expression. So how will we write this? We will take it to one side, del phi del x ij. Let it be in this side, and all the other terms we can say to take to the other side. Okay, so del phi del x ij is equal to phi I plus 1j minus phi ij divided by this delta x. Okay, so phi I plus 1j minus phi ij divided by delta x minus, so the second term will also go to the other side, del square phi del x square delta x square by factorial 2 divided by delta x. So you have delta x by factorial 2 minus del cube phi del x cube delta x to the power 3 by factorial 3 divided by delta x. So you have delta x square because you are dividing by delta x divided by factorial 3, which is 6. And you will have higher order terms. Higher order means higher power terms. Okay, order means the power, right? So if we ignore these terms, all the higher order terms, del square phi del x square, del cube phi del x cube, and any other term, so we can represent this del phi del x ij in terms of this difference, phi I plus 1 comma j minus phi I minus 1 comma j, sorry, minus phi I comma j by delta x, phi I plus 1 j minus phi ij by delta x. Okay, so this expression, just this expression, ignoring all the other terms, is known as finite difference expression or finite difference approximation of this term del phi del x. So the derivative del phi del x is represented by its finite difference approximation phi I plus 1 comma j minus phi I comma j by delta x. Okay, and all the other terms which are ignored are known as truncation error. We have removed this, so it will result in a small error. Okay, because we are truncating the expression, we are not going to infinite number of terms because it's not possible. So all this constitutes an error which is known as the truncation error. Okay. So now this term, I will come into questions, but this term, this approximation is known as first order approximation. Why first order? Because we have to look at the highest order error term. Okay. So remember, errors will decrease with the increase in order, because delta x is a very small term. Delta x square will be smaller, delta x cube will be smaller, delta x to the power n will be smaller. Okay, here I am speaking in non-dimensional form. So even if you have delta x equal to 2 mm, but in non-dimensional form it will be a small value. Okay, so if you non-dimensional with respect to the, so you can say that, say, sir, I have delta x in my problem, delta x is 10 mm. So delta x square will be 100 mm, delta x cube will be 1000 mm. So it's not decreasing, it is increasing. But actually we have to represent them when we are calculating it. The variation is actually depends on the non-dimensional form. Okay, so if your domain length is, say, domain length is always going to be greater than delta x, right? So if your domain length is 1000 mm, then your non-dimensional delta x is nothing but 10 mm by 1000 mm, 0.01. So delta x square will be 0.01 square, like this. So actual physical value is actually going to decrease with higher value of power. Okay, so the highest value term in the error is the first order term. In this case, this first term, which we can see is a first order term, delta x to the power 1. Okay, so that's why, because the truncation error here is first order error, we call it as a first order approximation. Okay, the first order forward difference. Why forward difference? First order now we have understood, because the error is first order. But why forward difference? Because we are calculating the derivative at derivative at ij in terms of the value at ij and I plus 1j. Okay, so in terms of the forward value, not the backward value. So we could have calculated in terms of the backward value also, but in this case we have used the forward value. That's why it is called as forward difference. Okay, So ultimately, now to summarize, we can write this first order forward difference for our first order derivative as del phi del x ij is equal to phi I plus 1 j minus phi ij by delta x plus the error terms. So when you are calculating in the code, you will just be writing del phi del x ij is equal to phi I plus 1 j minus phi ij by delta x. This error term is understood to be the error. Obviously, you will not include the error in the code. Okay, this is the error that is happening because we are removing the extra terms, and this error is of the order of delta x because the highest error term is as a order of delta x to the power 1. Okay, so the error is of the order of delta x. So the highest error term is the lowest order term, right? The highest error term is the lowest order term. So the lowest order term in the truncation error has delta x to the first power. So that's why we are writing that. So this is notation O, okay, not theta, large O, okay, big O, order, which represent order, okay, order delta x. What it means is that this finite difference representation is first order accurate. So how can we increase the accuracy of this first order term, first order representation? What will be a way to increase the accuracy?
Sir, we can take this delta x very small.
Correct. So if we want to keep it first order, the way to increase will be to take the delta x very small. Smaller you take, smaller will be the error. Okay. So for first order difference, the way to improve the accuracy will be to have a large number of points in the domain. Okay, large number of points in the domain, but that will increase the computational time that is required. Okay, so there are other ways to improve the accuracy if you do not take first order error. If the least error is second order term, then automatically the error will be significantly reduced even for the same delta x. Okay, so with smaller number of terms, smaller number of points, not smaller terms, with smaller number of points, we can get very high accuracy if we take second order accurate calculation, that we will see. But obviously there is a compromise because you need to calculate for each grid point, you need to do more calculation because now you will have to calculate another term. Okay, so we will see that next. Any questions on this? This is the basic idea behind finite difference method. I have shown one case, we will see all the other cases, but for every case the idea is same, and you can find for any derivative you can find for any derivative, whatever be the derivative, you should be able to find finite difference approximation. Okay, so for complex physics it is very good, this finite difference method, because in complex physics you may have lot of derivatives, different types of derivatives, mixed derivatives, second order derivatives, fourth order derivatives. So all these type of derivatives can be treated and simplified using finite difference method. So remember that for complex physics but simple geometries, finite difference method is suitable. We will study this later, but I am giving you a hint here. Okay. Any questions? So I hope this is very clear. We have gone here quite slowly, and many of you have already know these things. Okay, you've gone through the CFD elective course or may have studied in CFD course or some maths course, right? So let us see similarly first order backward difference. Okay, similar to the forward difference. I will keep the diagram open here. This is our diagram. It may look small, so I suggest all of you use laptops, not mobiles, to go through these classes. Otherwise, you may miss a lot of the detail. So for first order backward difference, again we can do the same thing. Now we will calculate at this point phi I minus 1j. Okay. So what is phi I minus 1j using Taylor series expansion? It is phi ij. Remember what is Taylor series expansion? Fx, so which is phi ij plus del f del x into delta x by 1. So del f del x is del phi del x at ij. Delta x here is minus delta x because you are going in the negative direction. Okay. So minus delta x by 1. Then del square phi del x square at ij, second term, It's basically the third term, into minus delta x square. Okay, so minus delta x square by 2. Then del q phi del x cube at ij into minus delta x cube by 6 and so forth. Okay, so now you can approximate this by taking del phi del x to one side, and you will find that del phi del x ij is equal to, so you can take this to the other side because there is a negative sign here. So del phi del x will be phi I comma j minus phi I minus 1 comma j by delta x. Then the highest order term will be first order term again. Okay, what will be the highest order term? So if you take this to the other side, you have plus delta x. So the highest order term will be del square phi del x square ij into delta x square by 2 divided by delta x. So delta x by 2. Okay, this will be the highest highest error term, lowest order term. So it is again first order accurate. This is known as backward difference because you are using the backward point for calculating the same derivative. So try to now also understand. So there are a lot of nuances to these things. It's not a matter of just memorizing or just going through the motions. Okay. So same derivative del phi del x at ij, I can represent by two types of equation, right? Phi I plus 1 comma j minus phi I comma j, or phi I comma j minus phi I minus 1 comma j by delta x. So there's no guarantee that I am going to get the same value for the derivative at this point, right? So for example, the value of temperature at this point, if it is 300, next point is 304, and this point is say 297. Here the delta means phi I plus 1 comma j minus phi I comma j will be 4. 4 divided by delta x will be your value. And here it will be 300 minus 297, 3 divided by delta x. So for the same point, you can get different values of del phi del x because we are approximating the solution. Okay. So forward difference may give a different value, backward difference may give a different value. The second order scheme may give you a different value. So the solution is not unique in this case because of the approximation that we are doing. Okay. So that you have to always keep in mind. Numerical, this is a numerical solution. It's not an analytical solution where you get the exact result. Okay. So you are using a certain numerical values, and that's why you're not able to exactly capture the derivative exactly at this point. You are capturing based on the slope between these 2 points or slope between these 2 points, and the slope can change. If it is a highly nonlinear problem, the slope can change drastically. If it's a linear problem, it will not change and your calculation will be more accurate. So let us try to look at another scheme which is more accurate. Again, these are very familiar for students who have studied maths or studied CFD as an elective earlier. But still, it is important to know this because with these small things, you can solve very complicated problems, very realistic, real life problems. Using finite difference schemes, you can solve complex problems like acoustic problems, wave propagation, things like that, or melting and solidification, boiling problem. Lot of turbulence, everything can be solved using finite difference scheme. So next scheme is central difference scheme. Okay, it's known as central difference scheme. This is central difference scheme for first order derivative. So what we will do is we will use the two expressions. Okay, the expression, this expression, where is the expression? Phi I plus 1 comma j is equal to phi I comma j plus whatever terms are there. And the second expression is phi I minus 1 comma j equal to phi I comma j plus these terms. Okay. So if I subtract this second equation from this first equation, what will you get? Phi I plus 1 comma j. Use the size even further. Phi I plus 1 comma j minus phi I minus 1 comma j on the left hand side. On the right hand side, phi ij minus phi ij, which gets cancelled. So there is no phi ij term. The next term is del phi del x delta x minus del phi del x minus delta x. So you will get 2 del phi del x delta x. Okay, minus minus gets positive. Then the third term is del square phi del x square delta x square by 2 minus del phi square del x square delta x minus delta x square by 2. Okay, so minus delta square is still positive, so this gets cancelled again. So the odd terms will remain, even terms will get cancelled. Okay, so the next term will be present, del cube phi del x cube delta x cube by 6 minus minus of del cube phi del x cube delta x cube by 6. So you will have 2 del cube phi del x cube at ij into this will be delta x cube. Okay. Okay. Delta x cube by 6. Based on this equation and this equation. So we have just subtracted one equation from the other equation, and in doing so, we have eliminated the one of the terms. Okay, phi term. So now if I write this, rearranging it, so del phi del x ij is equal to phi I plus 1 comma j minus phi I minus 1 j, comma j by 2 delta x. This 2 delta x. Okay. Now the second order derivative term is not there. It has vanished. It has got cancelled. So the next term is the third order derivative. Okay. So third order derivative is 2 del phi cube del x cube delta x to the power 3 by 6, and then you divide it by 2 delta x. Okay. So it will become delta x square by 12. So no, this 2 and 2 gets cancelled. Delta x square by 6. Okay. So the next term that is present here has the order of delta x square. Okay, second order term. First order term has got cancelled. So the error here is second order. Okay, so it is known as second order accurate because the highest error term, the least term which gets truncated, least order term which gets truncated is of second order. First order term has already got cancelled. So this term is the highest error term or the lowest order term in the error. So that is why this is known as second order accurate. So again, this is the same derivative. Derivative at the same point. But now I am writing this in terms of this point value minus this point value by 2 delta x. Okay. So instead of writing this minus this by this, I am writing this minus this by 2 delta x. And just this small change has improved the accuracy significantly. This is known as central difference scheme and has much higher accuracy. So we will need less number of points to get the same sort of accuracy. Any questions? So it is not, again, it is not a unique solution. Any other, you can find the, I will come to this discussion in a minute. Okay, I will show you other cases also. What I mean to say is that you can find the derivative, second order accurate derivative, second order accurate approximation, finite difference approximation for any point, not only based on these 2 points. I could have taken, so here I have calculated based on I minus 1j, ij and I plus 1j. I could have taken these 3 points also, ij, I plus 1j and I plus 2j. And then also I could have eliminated the terms suitably to find an approximate for this point. Okay. So there are a lot of, any sort of combination is possible. Okay. Each will give you a different solution with a certain error, but any sort of combination is possible. These are not unique solutions. Let us try to look at how to find the second order derivative, because in many of the equations we have second order derivative. Del square t del x square, del square u del x square, like this type of terms are there, right? So how to calculate how to convert them to algebraic equation. Okay. So for a general equation, second order term is the del square phi del x square term. So you will try to find the del square phi del x square for this point ij. Okay. Just a second. I will take another couple of minutes break here. I am struggling with throat infection. So just I will take a couple of minutes pause and then again continue. Okay. So we'll continue. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we want to approximate the second order derivative. Del square phi del x square. Okay. So what we can do is, instead of, so again it's just a matter of algebraic say rearrangement and cancellation of terms. So accordingly we can get. So we had one equation here. Phi I plus 1 j is equal to phi I j del phi del x I j delta x, this equation. And we had another equation here, phi I minus 1 j is equal to phi I j del phi del x I j into minus delta x. So this equation. We can add them together instead of subtracting now. We will add them together. So if you add them together, what do you get? And it is difficult to show in a single screen. It become too small. But still, let us try to. At least for students who can see. So if I add them, phi I plus 1j plus phi I minus 1j is equal to 2 phi ij. Plus now this first order term gets cancelled, because here we have a positive sign, here we have a negative sign, it gets cancelled. So this next term is the second order term, del square phi del x square delta x square by factorial 2. Here also we have del square phi del x square delta x square by factorial 2. So you will have two terms like this. So 2 into del square phi del x square delta x square by factorial 2. 2 gets cancelled. So you have del square phi del x square delta x square. Then the third term again gets cancelled, because this is positive and this is the same term but negative. So it gets cancelled. Then the next term that will be present is 2 into del 4 phi del x4 delta x to the power 4 by factorial 4. Factorial 4 is 24. So 2 into del 4 phi del x4 delta x to the power 4 by 24. So 2 and 24, if you cancel, you will get 12 here. And then you will have the sixth order term, delta x to the power 6. So all the even terms are now present. Odd terms has vanished. So now I can write this as del square phi del x square ij is equal to phi I plus 1j minus 2 phi ij plus phi I minus 1j by this term delta x square. Okay, and this additional terms, all the additional terms goes into truncation error. So what is the lowest order term in the error? Lowest order term is delta x to the power 4 divided by delta x square. So the lowest order term is delta x square term. Okay, so this is second order accurate. So this representation of del square phi del x square using this finite difference scheme is second order accurate. We can even have higher order accuracy, fourth order accuracy also for del square phi del x square. But then you will need more number of points, and then you have to eliminate judiciously more terms so that you get del square phi del x square, and all the terms, the first order term, here the first order and third order terms got cancelled. So there you have to eliminate first order, third order, fourth, all these terms. So that the lowest order that is present is sixth order, and then when you divide it by delta x square, it becomes fourth order accurate. This is possible. So similarly, all the derivative with respect to y also can be represented by as FD equations, finite difference equations. So here I have shown only the variations along the x direction, right? So the variation has come in terms of I plus 1, I minus 1. J has not changed. But same thing can be done in the y direction, where I will remain same, but the j will change. So for example, del square phi del y square ij is equal to, so in the y direction it will be phi ij plus 1. Same thing, but instead of I we have j minus 2 phi ij plus phi ij minus 1 by delta y square. Okay, plus order of delta y square. If delta y and delta x are similar, and any problems with a similar grid spacing in both directions, then the errors are of the same order. Like this, we can calculate any first. Now you know how to calculate any first order and second order derivatives and write them as difference equation. So if you have a steady state energy equation, you don't have any first order terms. You have or even if you have unsteady energy equation, you have a first order term and a second order term. Okay, if there is no flow, if you say there is no flow, you have a conduction term and unsteady term. You can replace those derivatives by using finite difference equations like this, and it can be solved to obtain the solution. Okay. So this is how the 2D grid structure will look like. So the I will be varying along the x direction. For example, this point is I comma j. This is I plus 1j. This is I minus 1j. Similarly, j is varying along the y direction. So this point is ij minus 1 and this is ij plus 1. This corner will be I plus 1 j plus 1. This will be I plus 1 j minus 1. So you can find out all the other variations. We write in terms of ij because we can run a loop while writing a program where I varies from say 2 to n minus 1 or something like that. And all the calculations can be done in a loop because all the calculations will be of similar nature for each point. Like the derivative calculation will be of similar nature for each point, unless you go to the boundary. So the only derivative that is still left for us is the mixed derivative. First order, second order, we know how to tackle, whether it's x, y, t. Okay. So the mixed derivative is of slightly different form. And again, I could have given this as an exercise to you, but here I will show it. But you can try to get other forms also as practice problems. Try other types of derivations, but I will show you one derivation for the mixed derivative. Okay. So again, we will go back to our Taylor series expansion. So all these are still based on Taylor series expansion, right? Because the first equation itself is based on Taylor series expansion. Phi I plus 1 comma j is equal to phi I comma j plus del phi del x ij delta x. This equation. This is this equation. So this I can write. Now I can take a derivative of this with respect to y. Okay. This was expanded with respect to x. Okay. This expansion was with respect to x, but because now I'm interested in mixed derivative, I want to get derivatives which are derivatives of in both x and y directions. I want to get some mixed derivative terms. That's why already derivatives with respect to x was there, but now I will differentiate it with respect to y so that I get some mixed derivative terms. Because differentiating with respect to x will not give me mixed derivative terms. So I will differentiate it with respect to y, and what will we get? So for this term, del phi del y I plus 1 comma j. This term is del phi del y at I comma j. This will be del square phi del x del y at I comma j into delta x. We are just taking a derivative with respect to y. We are not doing anything fancy. Then this term will be del cube phi del x square del y delta x square by 2. Okay. Similarly, you can see what this term will be del to the power 4 del x cube del y ij delta x to the power 4 by 6. Okay. So this is that expression. Similarly, for the other equation in the negative, the backward difference, I can again take a derivative with respect to y. It was already it was differentiated with respect to x. Now we will differentiate with respect to y. So if you do that, you will get del phi del y I minus 1 comma j equal to del phi del y ij minus del square phi, this term del square phi del x del y ij into delta x. So minus I have taken in this side, plus del cube phi del x square del y ij into delta x square by 2. Then again minus, because this minus sign will come out, minus del to the power 4 phi del x cube del y ij into delta x to the power cube to the power 3 by 6. Okay, like this you will have. So two equations from this forward and backward expansion. Okay, after taking after differentiating them with respect to y. So now again it's a matter of just elimination. Okay, so from the two equations, if you subtract the second equation from the first equation, so these are not arbitrary, right? Using some logic we are doing here. I am just saying that we are subtracting, but the logic is to eliminate some terms. Okay, so here the logic is to eliminate this term. So that's why we are subtracting. If there was a negative sign here, I would have added. So we have to think always logically why this is happening instead of just thinking or memorizing that this has to be done. No, it's not always the case. For another situation, maybe another expression will be there, but the logic will remain same. That we have to eliminate some terms so that our lowest order term is what we are interested in. So by subtracting this, we get del phi del y I comma I plus 1j minus del phi del y I minus 1j. This term gets eliminated. So the next term is 2 del square phi del x del y ij delta x. Okay. Then this term again gets this will get eliminated, right? This will get eliminated. And then you will have the next term will be the x cube term, delta x cube term, which is 2 del 4 phi del x cube del y delta x cube by 6. Okay, and so on. Next term will be delta x to the power 5. All the even powers of delta x has got eliminated. So now you can just, so we have found the form that we needed, because we need the form for this mixed derivative. We are interested in this mixed derivative, del square phi del x del y, right, at ij. So del square phi del x del y at ij is equal to del phi del y at I plus 1j minus del phi del y at I minus 1j divided by 2 delta x plus the other terms, truncation errors. Okay, because we are dividing by delta x, it is of the order of delta x square. 1 delta x is what I mean. Now this again del phi del y we have already calculated. We can write in terms of finite difference equation. Okay. So what is del phi del y? If I use central difference scheme here for calculating this, this is the central difference scheme, right? So del phi del y will be for I plus 1j it is. So phi I plus 1 j plus 1 minus phi I plus 1 j minus 1 by 2 delta y. Okay, same expression, but you are varying the j instead of I. I is remaining fixed as I plus 1. Similarly for this, minus phi I minus 1 j plus 1 minus phi I minus 1 j minus 1 by 2 delta y. Okay, and there will be some truncation order errors of the order of delta y square. So overall truncation error is of the order of delta x square delta y square. And so finally, by rearranging the terms, you get del square phi del x del y is equal to phi I plus 1 j plus 1 minus phi I plus 1 j minus 1 minus phi I minus 1 j plus 1 plus phi I minus 1 j minus 1 by 4 delta x delta y. Okay, so this is the expression for the mixed derivative. Now if there are any mixed derivatives, you know how to replace them. Okay, so ultimately what will happen, any equation is there, after replacing all this, what will you get? You will get expressions for the governing equation in terms of values at ij, I minus 1j, I plus 1j, ij plus. So in terms of grid point values. Ultimately what is happening for each case, you see, for each case starting from first order derivative, we are just getting values in terms of grid point values. We are writing the derivatives in terms of grid point values. And these grid point values need to be calculated to get the solution, right? So ultimately when you solve this, all these equations in terms of grid point values, you will get the values for the grid point, and that will be your solution. So one important thing to note here is that I've already mentioned this. Again, I will mention these expressions are not unique. You can derive them in different way by doing different eliminations, different rearrangement of terms, and you will get different expressions. Not only that the expression is different, the solution also, the value also will be different, right? So all these are approximate values. More accurate FD equations also can be derived. Okay, so for example, for the second order term, the second order term, our equation was accurate up to delta x square. Okay, second order accurate. But I can take more neighboring points. Instead of 3 points, if I take 5 points, so I can write the equations based on these 5 points. I will have different equations. Then I can eliminate the terms suitably so that the minimum error term is delta x to the power 4. That can be done. So this is one way to improve the accuracy by taking more number of points. Okay, so you can obtain higher order accurate values for any derivative. Obviously, it will lead to more calculation per point. Okay, but you get more accuracy. The second option is to increase the number of grid points. So you have finer grid points. For the same domain, you have number of equations. That also will increase the calculation time. So it is like a there is a like it's like you have to do some compromise at least in terms of calculation time to increase accuracy, which is understood, right? You will not get free accuracy. So somewhere something has to change to so that you can get higher accuracy. Just one final example here. So the same thing that what I was saying, right? So where is our structure? This one. Okay. So I can do the second order derivative del square phi del x square for ij in terms of 5 points also instead of 3. So I will have this phi I plus 2 comma j and phi I minus 2 comma j in addition to the 3 other points phi I minus 1 comma j, phi ij and phi I plus 1 comma j. So if you do that derivation, you will find that del square phi del x square ij is equal to minus phi I plus 2j plus 16 phi I plus 1j minus 30 phi ij plus 16 phi I minus 1j minus phi I minus 2j by 12 delta x square plus order of delta x to the power 4. So this is a fourth order accurate representation of this del square phi del x square time. It is much more accurate. Obviously, you need more points, but it is much more accurate. Okay. So you should be able to derive this. Okay. Just I am leaving this as an exercise problem for you to derive this. If it comes in the exam, you should be able to derive this and show that this is the expression for del square phi del x square for fourth order accuracy. Okay. Similarly, if you want third order accuracy or something, sixth order, it will be too complicated, but at least fourth order accuracy, you should know how to derive. Any questions? Everything
No.
is clear. I hope then finite difference method. Okay. So it's nothing very tricky. Any governing equation has lot of derivatives. It can be first order derivative like del t or del u del t. It can be second order derivative like del square u del x square, del square u del phi square, or there can be mixed derivative del square u del x del y type of term. Whenever we encounter a derivative, we can replace them by this finite difference equations. So ultimately, all the equations will become some sort of algebraic equation in terms of phi at different grid point values. Now, generally what will happen is that the number of unknowns and the number of equations that will be there. So if I have n minus 2 points, I will have n minus 2 equations and n minus 2 unknowns. Okay. So we can solve and we can get the value of phi for all the points. I will give you an example, practice problem maybe. I will send it or post it in Teams maybe today or after the next class. And like an assignment, it is an assignment problem where you need to derive and then write the code and solve a practical problem for heat transfer. So there is another way also to calculate or for finding FD equations. Actually, it is similar in idea to Taylor series expansion, but nominally the method is different. So it is known as method of polynomials. Okay, let me show you one example. Okay. We will be using Taylor series expansion, but just to know that there are other ways also to do that, we can do that. We can just go through one case. So say there is a variable phi. Okay. This phi can be also, I can assume that it can be represented by a polynomial. We don't know whether it can be represented by a polynomial or not, but I will assume that it can be represented by a polynomial. So this phi is varying with y. Say for example, it's a one-dimensional problem. Phi is varying with y. So I can assume a polynomial of this form: a plus by plus cy square. Phi is equal to a plus by plus cy square. But a, b, c are unknown. And if I want to do Taylor series expansion near the boundary, okay, I will not be able to get a second order accurate representation. If I want to use, I cannot use the central difference scheme because I do not have any point on the bottom of one point. Okay, what I can do is del phi del y at point 1 is a forward difference scheme. Phi2 minus phi1 by delta y plus order of delta y. How can I use second order Taylor series expansion for the boundary point? Is it possible? Second order accurate finite difference for the boundary point. What I have shown is the first order accurate. For second order accurate, you need the other point on the other side, which we do not have. But is it possible in some other way to have the second order accurate finite difference approximation? No idea? What do we need to do to improve the order of accuracy? So for first order accurate, you have seen so many cases today. How many points did we use for calculating a first order accurate scheme? Any of the first order accurate scheme, how many points were required for deriving those schemes?
Sir, 2 points. One is the point where we want, and the other is the next one, like the next to that point.
And for second order accurate scheme, how many points are required for deriving the scheme? Not the final expression, but for deriving the scheme, how many points are required for any second order scheme? For example, this is a second order. Central difference scheme is a second order scheme. Ultimately, the expression is in terms of 2 points. But while calculating, you need 3 points. Phi I, because we are using these expressions, right? Phi I plus 1j, phi ij, and phi I minus 1j. Then we are eliminating. So 3 points were required for calculating any second order expression, a second order accurate expression. So if I can devise based on Taylor series expression by including this point phi 1, phi 2, and phi 3, means phi at 1, 2, and 3, forward difference second order scheme. That also is possible. I am again leaving this as an exercise to you, but that also is possible to do that. Okay. Exercise means you don't have to submit. Just if you want to practice, you can do the practice. If you get in the exam, you might have to solve that problem. Okay. So we can devise a scheme where we have phi at 1, phi at 2, and phi at 3, and then eliminate the term suitably so that I can get a second order accurate value for del phi del y at point 1. It is possible. Anyway, let us come back to this. Okay. So now using normal central difference scheme is not possible. But if you use the polynomial scheme, what we need to do, we approximate phi as some polynomial a plus by plus cy square. So phi is a function of y. Phi varies with y. Okay. So phi at 1 can be written as y is 0. At y is, say y, this reference term is 0 at this point. Okay. So a plus b into 0 plus c into 0 square. So phi 1 is equal to a. Then say the distance between each point is delta y. So phi 2 is a into b delta y, because y is delta y, plus c into delta y square. And this point 3 is at a distance of 2 delta y. So phi 3 is a plus b into 2 delta y plus c into 4 delta y square, 2 delta y whole square. Okay. I have 3 equations, 3 unknowns a, b, c. Okay. So I can calculate the values of this a, b, and c in terms of phi 1, phi 2, and phi 3. So for example, b is equal to minus 3 phi 1 plus 4 phi 2 minus phi 3 by 2 delta y, just by elimination. Okay. So now we know that from this expression, we know that del phi del y should be equal to 0 plus b plus 2cy. Okay. And that y is equal to 0. At y is equal to 0, this term goes to 0. So del phi del y should be equal to b. Okay. So at point 1, del phi del y is equal to b. So we have already found v. So del phi del y at point 1 is 3 phi 1 plus 4 phi 2 minus phi 3 by 2 delta y. This is actually second order accurate. You can get that second order accurate. It is using 3 points instead of 2 points. Similar expression can be also found using Taylor series expansion. Okay, but this is how polynomial method works. Questions? Please go through this material, very easy to understand. Okay, and next class, I will describe a problem, and then I will give an assignment. Okay, after the next class. For the MTech students who are in gas turbine course, please note that tomorrow's class is going to happen because the holiday has been changed from tomorrow to Friday. So Friday we have a holiday, but tomorrow there is regular classes. We just got the notice today afternoon. So tomorrow we will have class. Anyway, so we will stop here. Don't leave yet. Stop the recording here.